Era for Mexican Americans in the United States of America. It was 1912 when New Mexico entered the Union as an officially bilingual state, authorizing funds for voting in both Spanish and English, as well as for bilingual education. Article 12 of the state constitution also prohibits segregation for children of Spanish descent. At the state's constitutional convention 6 years earlier, Mexican American delegates mandated Spanish and English to be used for all state business. The second major law that was passed for Mexican Americans in the United States was in the year 1968, when the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund opens its doors, becoming the first legal fund to pursue protection for the civil rights of Mexican Americans. Lastly, and possibly the most important law, was in 1974 when Congress passed the Equal Educational Opportunity Act of 1974 to make bilingual education more widely available in public schools all over the country of the United States of America. The first major court case to protect civil rights for Mexican Americans happened in 1931 in Lemon Grove, located in San Diego County. During the Depression, school officials segregated Mexicans and Mexican Americans into a separate school, enlisting legal counsel and the help of the Mexican Council. The Mexican community organized and took their fight to the Superior Court of California in San Diego, where they won the first school desegregation case. In addition to legal activism, Mexicans fought discrimination through social and cultural means. This marks one of the major first victories for Mexican Americans during this time. However, many years later, the United States was challenged in a Texas federal district court. The case Rodriguez arose when Ricardo Rodriguez, a Mexican who lived in Texas for more than a decade, sought final approval of his application for naturalization. Local politicians expressed their opposition to Rodriguez's petition, citing the racial restriction on citizenship that allowed only whites and blacks to naturalize. The efforts against the Rodriguez petition were part of a longer history of attempts to de-emphasize Mexicans in Texas. Eventually, however, federal Judge Thomas Maxey sided with Rodriguez. The judge did not try to argue that Rodriguez was white, and he agreed that Rodriguez could be classed with the copper-colored or red man. He has dark eyes, straight black hair, and high cheekbones. Yet Maxey argued both the Constitution of Texas Republic and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo either affirmatively conferred the rights of the citizenship upon Mexicans or tactically recognized in them the right of individual naturalization. Thus, Maxey upheld Rodriguez and, by extension, all Americans' rights to citizenship. The final court case that we chose to do for Mexican Americans during these time periods was Hernandez versus Texas. Pete Hernandez, an agricultural worker, was indicted for the murder of Joe Espinosa by an all-Anglo white grand jury in Jackson County, Texas, claiming that Mexican Americans were buried from the jury commission that selected juries and from petty juries. Hernandez's attorneys tried to quash the indictment. Moreover, Hernandez tried to quash the jury panel called for service. Because persons of Mexican descent were excluded from jury service in this case, a Mexican American had not served on a jury in Jackson County in over 25 years, and thus Hernandez claimed that Mexican ancestry citizens were discriminated against as a special class in Jackson County. The trial court denied the motions. Hernandez was found guilty of murder and sentenced by an all-Anglo jury to life in prison. And affirming, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals found that Mexicans are members of and within the classification of the white race, as distinguished from members of the Negro race, and rejected the petitioners' agreement that they were a special class under the meaning of the 14th Amendment. Further, the court pointed out that so far as we are advised, no member of the Mexican nationality challenged this classification as white or Caucasian. However, in a unanimous opinion delivered by Chief Justice Earl Warren, the court held that the 14th Amendment protects those beyond the two classes of white or Negro, and extends to other racial groups and communities, depending upon whether it can be factually established that such a group exists within a community. In reversing, the court concluded that the 14th Amendment is not directed solely. We have three major improvements for Mexican American civil rights. However, they were not passed as laws. The failure to link whiteness to citizenship for Mexicans in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo would become the treaty's Achilles heel, providing an opening for those who sought to establish Mexicans as ineligible for citizenship for decades to come. A prominent example of contesting Mexicans' rights to U.S. citizenship occurred in 1897, when the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo's provision extended eligibility for citizenship to Mexicans living in lands ceded to the United States. Some of those states included Texas. The second was in 1929. Several Latino service organizations merged to form the League of United Latin American Citizenship, called the LULAC. The group organizes against discrimination and segregation and promotes education among Latinos. It's the largest and longest-lasting Latino civil rights groups in the country to this date. The next major improvement for Mexican Americans was done by a man named George I. Sanchez, who was a major part in improving the educational systems for Latinos across the United States. Of course, for his group mainly being Mexicans. The way he was able to do this was bringing awareness to how the Mexicans and Latinos all across America were not being treated correctly. He taught this at his universities he would teach at, which include the University of Texas. This is how George I. Sanchez was able to make civil rights improvements for his people and the Latinos because he brought awareness to it.
Hardened by his early experience as an immigrant worker, Chavez found that the National Farmer Worker Association in 1962, his union joined with the agricultural workers organizing committees in his first strike against the grape growers in California. And the two organizations later merged to become the United Farmers. Tracing nonviolent methods, Chavez drew attention from his causes via boycott, marches, and hunger strikes. Despite conflicts with the Teamsters Union and the legal barriers, he was able to secure raises to improve conditions for farm workers in California, Texas, Arizona, and Florida. Pedro Infante. Among the unfinished projects, he was led with the Tijera de Oro, a comedy about the hairdressers, as well as ambition film, which he was due to play the character Jesus Christ in Juarez, also among others. Pedro Infante died in a plane crash in Madrid, Yucatan, on April 15, 1957. This shocked the entire country and turned him into a myth of the Mexican cinema. The crowd filled the streets to bid farewell to the big screen idol, who, with his voice, his presence, and his figure marked an era in the Mexican cinema. George I. Sanchez. Dr. Sanchez died on April 5th, 1972. Among many honors in his memory, the National Education Association sponsored the George I. Sanchez Memorial Award to recognize him as the father of the movement for quality education for the Mexican Americans. The United States Office of Education named a work section in the room and the new United States Office of the Education building for him. Schools in the Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Texas were named for him. In 1995, the University of Texas rededicated its education building as the George I. Sanchez Building. Sanchez was the specialist in the mental measurement of the bilingual education and the critic of the culture bias and the intelligence test of the day. He was been called for the founder of Chicano education physiology and still given much credit in regards to his methodological studies in bilingual education, which are still basis of the study of the current field.